It's party time, my golf story, brought to you by Party Drinks. Classically designed golf drinks for golfers by golfers. And the golf real estate pros Gene Walsh and Vince Visicaro. For your Southwest Florida real estate needs, check them out.
Hi, everyone. I am Andrew McCabe, master distiller and creator of Party Brands. Thanks for checking out It's Party Time, my golf story. Brought to you by Party Drinks and the elite real estate team of Gene Walsh and Vince Visicaro of Suncoast Dreams, your source for all things real estate in the Sarasota, Bradenton area. So tonight we're going to switch things up a little. I'm going to try hosting, and Kevin Walsh is going to be our guest. Kevin has a million golf stories that he can, and hopefully he can regale us with a few. So great to see you, Kevin. How's it going?
Hey, man, that was pretty good. You seem like you know what you're doing.
Okay.
But I know you have some broadcasting your background. So where does your broadcast? This is about where does your golf story begin? What's your broadcasting story? Because I know there is one. All
right. Well, it's sad to say it's like 35 years ago. I was living in China in Beijing in 1988 and 89. And that's when Mikhail Gorbachev came to visit Beijing. And all of a sudden, there was a giant student protest. And I just happened to have a job at CNN at the time. And I kind of learned how the broadcast, the whole world works, like doing the teleprompter and taking people to the site and changing batteries and all that.
Whoa, hold on a minute. So you didn't grab a microphone and jump in front of a camera and just own it?
No, I never got to go on. They wouldn't let me up in front of it. It's just not that good. So, but I got to meet a lot of interesting people like Mike Chinoy. Remember him?
I do. He was like an international correspondent.
Yeah.
But hold on a minute. What the hell?
Bernie Shaw?
Bernard Shaw. Yes, of course.
Yeah, he was a great guy.
Yeah.
I'd sit next to him at the desk.
So as he's bringing the broadcast in, you're sitting there running the teleprompter, hoping not to mess it up. Am I going down the right path here?
He's also asking me questions like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And at the end, when the things are going bad, I was actually the guy guarding the satellite dish in the tent out in the woods, make sure that the broadcast didn't get sabotaged. But enough about that. But
okay. Well, I was going to ask you about the guy in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square and everything. At some point, did you? Yeah. Well, I mean, that was one of the most important tipping points in history. What happened there?
True. I don't know. And that was the real deal. The night when that happened, I heard automatic gunfire the entire night. And the entire night was going on. And you could just hear tanks rolling up and down the streets. It's like, it was chaos. And I was actually lucky to be able to leave the next few days later. Like we had to bribe a taxi driver. I mean, it was like $20, but it was still a lot for them to get all the way out to the airport. So it was a great experience. And I'm not sure broadcasting was for me, but it was, I enjoyed it. I mean, I think CNN was a different animal back then too, but we won't go there.
I hear what you're saying. I don't know. Are we going to talk about golf? And I don't know how we went there. I think I hijacked your interview. I apologize. This is your interview.
Yeah,
so I'll just shut up and take your questions.
All right. Well, so I'm the host tonight, and we're going to talk about Kevin Walsh, his golf story. So, Kevin, take us back to the beginning. How does your golf story start?
I can't imagine life without golf. It means that much to me. Golf is everything in my life. It's not just a game I play. Everything I have in my life, there is a profound golf connection. I mean that in every shape of the word. All the people I know that are near and dear to me, my wife, my friends, where I went to college, where I choose to work right now, everything I have in my life, there's a golf connection to it. So if I were to take golf out of it, the trajectory in my life might be something very different. But to be exact, it started at 1260 George Road, Meadowbrook, Pennsylvania. I grew up in suburban Philadelphia, had two brothers and still have two brothers. And my father was a golfer. And I think my story is similar to a lot of boys. They see dad leaving the house, playing a game, and they're wondering what's going on. And might there be some day where I would join him? And eventually that day came. I'm 53 now. So I think my first introduction into golf was about 50 years ago. And it's been with me ever since, and it'll be with me until the day I die.
So did you know you were good right away? Like, did you play other sports? And, tell us how it began that way.
Sure. Yeah. I was good at golf. I was a good athlete. I don't know why. I don't know that my parents were. My mother played no sports. My dad played sandlot baseball growing up. The golf that he played was largely the golf that he earned through having golfing privileges by being a caddy at Montclair Country Club in North Jersey, where he grew up. My parents were New Yorkers. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. And I just had good hand-eye coordination, and I was a good baseball player. And eventually my dad just said, well, let's see if we can get him some professional instruction, see if he takes to it. And I don't think there was any attempt to try and build a competitive golfer at the time. It was just, let's see if the kid likes it, because I think my parents very astutely saw golf for us as a chance for social upward mobility. It certainly was for them. My mom came really from nothing. She was a poor girl from the Bronx, but was educated, eventually put herself through college and nursing school. And my dad went to Georgetown on a ROTC scholarship. And they maybe didn't have the things as kids that they were able to provide for us. But I think they were smart enough to recognize that if you're around people of clout, if you're in a good culture, a game of honor, then maybe good things would happen. And eventually that's how my life unfolded, with a lot of people who I knew in golf helping me along the way.
So where did you learn? Who taught you?
My first golfing experience was I've had three pros in my life. The first pro was Chap Rafferty. He was a golf pro at a driving range called Somerton Springs, which was on the northeast side of Philadelphia. And there was a 18-hole executive course attached to it. So one of those courses where you have a couple par fours, it's mostly par threes. And he taught me the proper grip. And then eventually I went to a golf camp. It was a day camp for 2 weeks, and I loved it. And I would not get off. I just loved hitting balls and just swinging for the fences. When I was 5 years old, I could hit about 100 yards, and I just kept hitting balls and balls until my hands were almost bleeding. I couldn't get enough of it. And I kind of liked the showmanship part of it. The crowd would, not like a Tiger crowd. Let's not get confused about that. But people watched me and they're like, hey, this kid's pretty good. And then eventually, Chap died. He was an older man. It was probably a sunset job for him. And then I took lessons from a man named Wally Paul at the old Oak Terrace Golf Club, which was later renamed Talamore. And my last teacher was Jack Connolly, who went on to become the president of the PGA of America. And maybe people have seen him before, because when Tiger was in his prime and winning all those PGA championships, Jack Connolly was the guy that was handing the Wanamaker Trophy over.
Nice. That's awesome. So do you remember the first time you broke 80?
Yeah. When I was 12, I was knocking on the door a couple of times, and that was like a mythical number. And I broke it for the first time when I was 13. And I had to make par on the 18th hole. It was at Huntington Valley Country Club, which eventually became my home club. My family, we were fortunate enough to join there. And I just remember being over the moon. I just felt like a huge barrier had been crossed, and I couldn't wait to get home to tell my dad about it. And man, that was special. And then that kind of set up, well, what's next? 70, and when might that come?
So when did that come?
Came the next year.
Really?
When I was 14.
Wow.
when I was 14, I had I'll never forget the 18th hole at Huntington Valley is, and I was playing the white tees then. It's about 390 yards uphill all the way. So it plays about 420. And back then that was a long hole for me. It was usually like a driver and a 3-wood. So there was no guarantee that I was going to hit the green. And I'd say more than half the time I didn't make par, even though I was becoming a good player. And I was 1 under, par was 70. And all I wanted to do was make par. And I was so nervous on the tee shot. And I somehow got it in the fairway. And I hit a real nice shot into the green. It was a 3-wood, and I had a 20-foot downhill putt, and it was super fast. And all I was thinking about is just lag that baby up there and get 69. And as soon as I hit it, I'm like, I think the speed's pretty good. I think we got it. And as it got closer and closer to the hole, I'm like, that might go in, and it did. And I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. And once I couldn't wait to get home and tell my dad. And that was such an important part of my growing as a good golfer, because I just built on that. I'm just like, okay, well, what's next? And from that point on, I had the expectation that I can shoot under par any given day.
So did you play junior golf? Like, did you have what was that experience like?
Oh, yeah. Well, we had, so I played in like interleague stuff with my club, but we also had a pretty cool program in the Philadelphia area. It was called the Philadelphia Junior PGA. And it was like a mini tour. And we would have 1 or 2 events each week. And I played in a bunch of those, had good success on those, won quite a few times, a dozen or more. And had a good run. And then as I got a little bit older, I tried to start playing in some bigger, more national events, because I was trying to attract some attention of college coaches. And I wanted to see if maybe a scholarship was in the cards.
So what was your biggest achievement in junior golf?
Probably winning the Philadelphia Junior. I won that at 16. And I was lucky that my home club hosted that. So I think that was a massive advantage over everything. And we had at my club, Huntington Valley was like the players club in the 80s for sure. We had 12 scratch or better golfers. And sometimes at clubs like junior golfers are treated like you can't play till after a certain time. And we had those rules too. But if you were a good player and you were putting in the time, the older players, the better players would invite you along to play with them. And so I got invited along with them. There were 2 other junior golfers who were dear friends of mine. One's name is Bill Hyman. He is now the executive director of the First Tee of Philadelphia. And the other is Doug Greger. And Doug won the Philadelphia Junior the year before I did, which put a lot of pressure on Bill and me. We called Bill King back then because there were 3 Bills alive in his family. He was William the 5th. And but healthy competition makes you better, right? And so I had that with my contemporaries, other junior golfers, but I had other really good golfers that I could look up to. There was a man named Gordon Brewer, who was the Pennsylvania State Amateur Champion. He eventually became the U.S. Senior Champion. And his son, Chip Brewer, who went on to become and is now the CEO of Callaway Golf. These were the people that I was just so fortunate to have around me, and they invited me to play along with them. And so if you want to be a good player, play with better players. But I'll tell you this, they never took it easy on me. And that was a good thing, because that's how I think I grew into become a pretty good amateur player.
That they never gave you putts, right? You always had to make everything in the cup.
Oh, well, we did that, and we played for money. And I had money because I caddied at a young age, and they knew that. And so they knew to play well under pressure, you needed to play under pressure all the time. Now, that might be a little bit of a gambling game or whatever it is. And it was on. A couple of times it was on.
So did you give your caddy money back, or did you take more?
Well, I usually won, but sometimes the stakes, and it just depends on who you're playing with. There were some other players with which it was all about gambling. It wasn't so much about the competition and the score. I would say with the Brewers and the Brookersons and the Riley brothers, these are names that would be known around the Philadelphia area for sure. That was all about the competition. But then there's some of my dad's friends. They were really into gambling, the insurance guys. And if it ever got a little too much, they would sponsor me. So they would absorb all my losses, but if I won, they would take 2/3. So there were a couple ways to do it.
Wow, that sounds like some guys with some they get taking the vig, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, hey,
but if I'm
money.
not, yeah, if I don't have the balls to put it on the line, then it's only fair that they're putting it all on the line, so they want a bigger cut.
Yeah, I get you. So college, where'd you go to college and how'd you get there?
I went to Purdue University. I had some opportunities to play at Temple, Villanova University, LaSalle, all Philadelphia area schools. It had an opportunity to play at Florida International University, but Purdue, I wanted to play major Division I golf because I wanted to see how good I was, and I wanted to see maybe just a different area of the country to kind of get away from home a little bit. And so I went to Purdue, and the player on the team who was my host at the time, I don't know if it was homecoming weekend, but whatever. I remember the coach, Joe Campbell, who was an absolute Indiana legend. He picked me up at the airport with Jeff Williams, who is now the head pro at Speedway Golf Club, right at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And Joe, we just called him Joe, or Coach. He said, Kevin, I was planning on you staying with Jeff at his fraternity house, and they're having a big old party tonight. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, you can stay at my house. But if you'd like to stay with Jeff, you can. And I turned around, I looked in the back of the van, I looked at Jeff, and he's just like, it's okay. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'll stay with Jeff. And it was a great party. I love the people. I love the campus, the golf. It was the caliber of golf I was looking for. And I went to Purdue, and thank God I did.
So what was the experience like? It's probably the little cold weather golf a lot, huh?
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough in the beginning. I thought I was good, and the reality is I wasn't good enough. I wasn't ready for that level of play, because everybody who's playing any major Division I sport, they were the man wherever they came from. And then when you meet somebody else that thinks they're the man, like everybody was like, well, I'm my state amateur champion. Well, I'm the U.S. junior champion. Well, I'm the world amateur champion. And everyone's like, I don't care. I didn't care about them. They certainly didn't care about me. And I couldn't crack the lineup my freshman year. And that was humbling, for one, and embarrassing because I was on a partial scholarship, and there were some walk-ons that were beating me regularly, and I wasn't sure that I could cut it. But by my sophomore year, I got so burned out on golf, and Purdue's not the easiest academic school either. So I struggled academically. And I remember my high school teachers saying, like, wait till you get to college. It's going to go 3 times as fast is what this is. And I was like, yeah. You're just saying. They weren't kidding about that. I mean, that was spot on. So I think I was struggling with the academics at Purdue. I was struggling with how hard the golf really was. And finally, by my sophomore year, I thought about transferring briefly. And then I just thought, I didn't want to be a quitter. And I just tried to put the fun back in golf. And I did. And I got solidly back in the lineup my sophomore year. We also had some seniors graduate, so that opened up some opportunity. And then I stuck. And from sophomore year on to my senior year, I was pretty solid, anywhere from 1 to 3. Usually 2 or 3 was the number that I played, but it was hard. I just could not believe how good everybody was a champion from somewhere. Everybody was scratcher better, and it's only gotten more difficult over the years. It is like major Division I college golf is professional golf masquerading as amateur golf, and it was back then, and it's all that and more today.
Wow. So what did you actually do to have fun in golf?
I just got back to what's the point? This is a game. And I heard an incredible interview that was so profound, and it spoke to me at a time that I needed to hear it. I was just watching an interview, and there was an interview with Tom Pernice Jr. Now, if you don't know the story of Tom Pernice Jr., he was on the great UCLA teams that also produced Corey Pavin and Steve Pate. But Tom Pernice Jr. was the player. He was the one that was supposed to make it. Now, Corey Pavin turned out to be the best player of the bunch. Steve Pate, he was also a Ryder Cupper, won a couple of times.
You remember Corey? You remember Corey used to play the Cleveland Irons? Remember those?
He used to play those, and he had that mustache that was usually only on men of, certain movie acting abilities and everything. But he, what a player he turned out to be. But Tom Pernice Jr. told the story about how he couldn't believe how wrapped up his self-esteem was in his golf game, and how if he was playing poorly, he would come home and he would feel lesser about himself. And he had some struggles at home. He talked about he had a child, I think it was his daughter, who was blind. And he couldn't believe like how frustrated he could be with himself, and like why his livelihood or a game that he played just had such an impact on him. And he was telling my story. I'm like, you know what? I'm somebody's brother. I'm somebody's friend. Golf is a game I play. I try to be good at it. I try to honor my coach and my teammates, but it's not who I am as a person. Needs to be something different from that. And if I had not seen that interview and Tom Pernice Jr. putting it all in perspective, that's what helped me put it all in perspective. And I just said, regardless of how I play, my main goal is not so much to shoot a low score. It's just to have a good time. And then it just kind of fell into place. And if I didn't see that interview, I don't know. I really don't.
Because you do have a lot of stress. I mean, you have like 5 scorers, 5 players, and one guy doesn't play well, the team loses, right? There's a lot of pressure.
There's pressure. You count 5 guys, you count 4 scores, and you never wanted to be that guy. And like whenever the coach would wander around and he'd say, how you doing? And you'd let him know. And you never wanted to be the guy who said, I'm out. Hey, it's on everybody. You wanted to put it, because if everybody else was playing well, then I think that freed you up to play freely instead of grinding. It was, I tell you what, there is a lot of pressure if you're playing college golf, because somebody else wants your spot. There may be money involved. And think of the investment that a lot of parents make sending their children to elite golf academies, the IMGs of the world, professional instruction, whatever it is. And I think the pressures is infinitely higher now than it was back then. And trust me, it was all that I could handle.
Oh yeah, I was a golf dad. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we put undue pressure on our kids, and they probably put more pressure on themselves. But that's what makes you great. So Kevin, what's the deal with Jim Furyk? Yeah, you had a few run-ins with him. What's the beef?
It's not a beef, but they're a good story. So, all right. Yeah. So I'll tell you, the first time I met Jim Furyk, I was 17 years old, and I told you earlier that I was playing the Philadelphia PGA Junior Tour. And this summer of my senior year in high school, I played in fewer events because I was trying to play more national events to get national exposure. And we had a season-ending championship, and to qualify for the championship, you had to have one top 5 finish. And I knew even if I played once, I was going to finish in the top 5. And so I went to the second to last tournament of the year, and I went to the driving range to warm up before the round. And my mother had saved all these newspaper clippings of the results from them. And I keep seeing this name. Is it Jim Furyk? Jim Furyk? I don't even know how to say the guy's name. I don't know who he is. He's from Lidditz, PA, which is Amish country. I'm like, who is this guy? So I go to the range and I see one of my buddies that played in all those events. He wasn't particularly competitive, but he was at them all. And I'm like, hey, Tommy, who's this guy, Jim Furyk, Furyk? And I'm like, who? And he like points to the other end of the range, and I see that loopy swing, and I look at him, and I look at Tommy, and I'm like, it can't be that guy, not with that swing. And he's like, oh, trust me, he's good. And I look back, and I saw Jim take another swing and hit a ball. I said, he can't be that good, no way. And he's like, oh, trust me, he's good. So in a little bit of gamesmanship, I went over and parked myself next to Jim, right? And I said, Jim, how are you? My name's Kevin Walsh. Congratulations on your great summer. How many tournaments have you won? Like 7 or 8? I'm like, sounds phenomenal. He gets up in my face like you've never seen. Like, I have never had there's somebody, we can get in that story later. He got right up in my face. He's like, I've won all of them, every one of them. And I was so put back by his cockiness. I'm like, oh, excuse me. And then he kind of like, backs away and goes and hits balls, and he's like in a huff about it. And then I'm just like, God, that was weird. And so I parked my balls next to him. I started hitting balls, and then I see Jim like kind of like walk off to the side and sees my boy Tommy, and he waves him over. He's like, hey, who was that guy that like came over? He goes, that was the guy that was winning them all before you came along. And Jim goes, is he any good? And he's like, he's good. He's the one you have to beat. Well, guess what? Jim beat me that day. All right. And I was so pissed off. And I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen again. And wouldn't you know it? In the championship, I just clipped him. And so at the very least, I'm 1-1 against Jim Furyk.
Nice. So where did he go to college?
He ended up going to University of Arizona. And my sophomore year, we had a transfer from Arizona. His name was Jason Bostwick, and he came to Purdue, and he's like, yeah, I play golf with Furyk at Arizona. I play golf with Furyk. And I'm like, big deal. I beat him. And he's like, no, you didn't. He's an All-American. And I'm like, I don't care if he's an All-American. I beat him, which I did. And I never thought Jim would turn out to be a good player with that crazy swing, but he was right. He ended up becoming the number 2 ranked player in the world eventually. Ryder Cup captain, Ryder Cup player, stalwart. He was the real deal.
Wow. So there's hope for all of us, or at least some of us.
Mm-hmm.
So after college, where does your life take you?
Well, about halfway through college, I thought I had the game to play the tour if I wanted to, but I could quickly see that like those that were playing great at the college level, they just had a different love for the game that I had. And I loved the game, and I loved competing, but they were. Well, let's use Jim Furyk as an example. Like Jim, you could see needed competition in his life, and it takes that kind of drive to have the kind of success that he's had or anybody else would have. And I'm like, I just can't see myself doing this. So I'm like, well, where does that leave me? What can I do? What skills do I have? And I quickly concluded, I have no skills. And I'm like, other than golf, I'm like good at like with people. I'm pretty good at talking and public speaking. And that's when I started considering broadcasting. And fortunately through golf, I told you in the beginning, without golf in my life, I have nothing. some dear friends of mine that I grew up with in the Philadelphia area, the Riley brothers, three PGA of America golf pros. Their dad was a golf pro. The older brothers, Will and Hugh, I used to travel with them to junior golf tournaments because they were my ride. And they were like my big brothers. I mean, they showed me how to play competitive golf. But the kicker, like how that led to my career in broadcasting, was they were giving, Willie, the oldest brother, was giving golf lessons to Larry Kane. Larry Kane was one of the top news anchors at the CBS affiliate. First at the ABC affiliate, Action News in Philadelphia. He was the original Action News anchor. And then he worked at Channel 10, which was WCAU TV and eventually KYW TV. But he was like the voice of reason, the voice of God. He was the news anchor that everybody knew. And he took golf lessons from my pal, Willie Riley. And when I thought, well, maybe I could do something like Larry does. And you know how it works, Andrew. It's not what you know, it's who you know. So I asked the Rileys, would you introduce me to Larry Kane? And they did. And then one night at college, I get a phone call, and it's like the voice of God calling and say, Kevin, this is Larry Kane. He's like, what's this? I hear you want to be a newscaster. He's like, what? Do you know what's involved in that? And he eventually helped me get an internship at WCAU TV, and that was the start of it. But without the golf, I wouldn't know Larry Kane, and I can't even imagine my life in broadcasting without him. He became my mentor, my good friend, and there's all a golf connection to everything.
So your first broadcasting gig. Is it true you're wearing Aloha shirts instead of a coat and tie on camera?
Yeah. My first TV job. So broadcasting, think of like Major League Baseball. I mean, you could be good at it and you get drafted, but you don't go right to the big leagues. You go to rookie ball and then single A and then high single A, double A, triple A. But the reality is most people they'll never get to the top. But the whole point in broadcasting is just go somewhere, get on air, get started. And my first TV job was in Guam. And if anyone needs a geography lesson, take out a globe and keep turning it and turning it and turning it. And you'll see a little dot in the Western Pacific Ocean out near Asia, out near the Philippines. It's about 1,000 miles away from Manila. Depending on where in Japan you are, it's a 3 or 4 hour flight. But it's basically out in the middle of the ocean. It's a U.S. territory. They're American citizens. And one of my buddies who I was working in radio with, I took a radio job right after I graduated from Purdue. And he got himself a job with Guam Cable TV. That was the name of the company. They wanted to hire him, and they needed another one. But they had trouble getting people to come out there because it was so far away. And most people, they weren't going to get on a plane and fly for 30 hours to the other side of the world. But my buddy Jeff did. And he still lives in Guam, by the way. Wow. And I did too. And so it was the road less traveled by. And you're a mass hole. I was a mass hole for 10 years. Our favorite poet, Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken, 2 paths diversion road in the wood. I took the road less traveled by, and it made all the difference. And even though there's not a road that goes out to Guam, you kind of get the metaphor.
You must have loved the pig roast there.
The pig roast was even better in Hawaii. That was the next stop, right? So,
okay.
But
so that's my next question: is what happened next?
Well, so like in broadcasting, you're trying to climb the ladder. Like baseball, you want to get to the next level as quickly as you can. And so let's just say Guam was rookie ball, and I wanted to get back to the mainland U.S. and get to a big market as quickly as I could. But just like Major League Baseball, you don't decide when you're coming back. It's like you got to really pay your dues, and you got to be good, and then you got to get lucky, and you just kind of make a succession along the way. And I was sending videotapes, which were like a broadcaster's resume. right? Because they want to see who you are and what you can do. I was sending them to news directors at their 4 TV stations in Hawaii. And eventually one took a bite and said, yeah, why don't you come join us? And I'm like, well, how about an interview? They're like, nah, we saw your tape. You're good enough. You're ready to go. So that's how I ended up in Hawaii.
But you start off as a news guy. How'd you get into sports?
That came later. Yeah, I think I wanted to be the next Larry Kane, who I told you about. He ended up becoming my mentor, or like a Peter Jennings, a Dan Rather, or a Tom Brokaw. And I thought I was on my way. So from Hawaii, I went to Fresno, California, and then Fresno, California, I went to Philadelphia, where I was a news anchor there, and I was one of the co-hosts on a morning news program, and it was called CN8. It was the old Comcast network. So it was the Comcast, as we know, as the major cable company. It was its own network, and we did our own newscasts, and we had news related programming and everything else. And then there was a change in management and everything, and they just eliminated the network. And I was still under contract, so they had to pay me. And I'm like, but we had a sports division, which was called Comcast Sportsnet Philadelphia, which was later renamed NBC Sports Philadelphia. And they were regional sports networks still under the Comcast umbrella. And they started similar programming in Boston. And I needed a job, and they said, well, would you go to Boston? I said, well, can I do sports? If I can't do news here under the Comcast umbrella, can I do sports? And they're like, well, can you do sports? And I'm like, I'm a guy. What do you think I can do? And so I went and I had an interview at Comcast Sportsnet Philadelphia, and the news director at the time said, well, can you name the Philadelphia Phillies starting infield? I'm like, not only can I do that, I can name everybody in the bullpen. And so they brought me on board, and they're like, oh, yeah, he can do this. And then they shipped me up to Boston. And well, that's how I met you. And that's how I ended up going to 4 Super Bowls with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and 3 Stanley Cup finals with the Bruins. I have no idea how it happened. I got lucky as hell, didn't I? I mean, I think that's what it is, right?
So when did you actually first start with Comcast in Boston?
2009.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Wow.
2009. So I moved up, and just to give you a little perspective, the Celtics were just coming off a world championship. The Red Sox, was it 2008 or 2007? Andrew, help me. So
I think it was 7, the Red Sox.
Yeah.
But that one year that the Celtics won, or that was 11? No, wait. What's the year that everybody won?
I forget. Let me just. It doesn't. But it
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It was like, by this point, like, Boston as the greatest sports city in America was very solidified, and I happened to parachute into it. And I'll never forget, like, the first time I went to Gillette Stadium for a Bill Belichick news conference, in which he gave me the hairy eyeball, which just means I have a lot of company. There was an older grizzled cameraman who said, "Kid," and the Patriots. It almost seemed like they were on the decline, because they had the perfect season until they lost in the Super Bowl, the helmet catch. That was 2007, and then Tom Brady blew out his knee the next year in 2000, and so things were not looking that great. And his cameraman says, "Kid, it'll never be this good again." And I'm like, thanks, man. Thanks for shitting on my dream. And you know what? It got better. It got better. So ultimately, the Patriots, and I went with them to 4 Super Bowls. They won 2. So they won 6 with Tom Brady. So I got to see that up close. And then the Bruins were good from the time I got there in 2009 to when I left in 2020. And they won a Stanley Cup, lost 2. I think it's good to see the losses and just like how painful they are to everyone. If you're winning all the time, then you don't have an appreciation for how painful it is and the sacrifices that have to be made to make it all happen. But you know as well as I, there is a whole generation of kids that are say like 23 and younger, they have no idea the struggles that maybe you grew up with in Boston. I mean, it's like been unprecedented success, and it can be a little obnoxious at times too.
Oh, of course. But I remember like Steve Grogan, and back in the day with the Patriots, nobody even went to the games. And the Bruins who went from 1972 was the last time they won the Stanley Cup. And now we're like knocking on the door.
39 years between Stanley Cup wins and then the Patriots' incredible run of success. And what it did is it all fed on each other. So like one team, like all the teams, it was a rising tide for all the teams because they didn't want to be the team that was sucking when everybody else was doing great. And I'm sure you've seen the picture. It's been in the Boston Globe. There's this kid that, sign. It's like nicely done. And he's got all the logos. He's like 12 years old, 10 world championships, and it's got like 4 Patriots logos on it. It's got a Celtics thing. It's got the Bruins, and it's got a couple Red Sox things. Cute picture. That kid's got to be in his late teens, if not 20. But if that kid walked down Broad Street in Philadelphia holding a sign like that, he would be clotheslined. All right. But that is like a snapshot of how a lot of your kids. This is how your kids grew up, and mine to an extent as well.
That's what I like about being the West Coast of Florida, because everybody's from somewhere else, and everybody has their team, and nobody cares about your Patriots. Nobody cares about your Bruins. Nobody cares about your Red Sox. And it's like you have to get along, go along to get along with everybody. So it's like one big happy family. I like that.
Yeah, you're right about that. And because everybody's from somewhere else and Florida is growing, especially I live in a new community. Nobody's been here long enough to have a foothold and to just be like, this is mine. It's just like we've all come down here to start a new life. I certainly have. And we look around as we see new neighbors moving in. We look around with an acknowledgement, this is pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? You know why it's good? Because it's Florida, the weather's great, and the neighbors are great. Don't be the guy to mess it up.
But people are still planting their flags in the front yard.
Yeah, it's that's getting a little obnoxious with like the college that they went to and just like their sports teams. Well, here's the one. At the time of this recording, we know the Detroit Lions have a pretty good run. Where are all these Detroit Lions flags like the last 30 years? Okay, exactly. I mean, if you were a Lions fan, you were in hiding. But you know what? Good for them. I think a lot of them, they suffered. It's their time and fine. Look, you and I have deep roots in New England. It's time for somebody else to. Sometimes
look okay. At that. They're playing Tampa this weekend. What do you think?
I tell you what. After seeing what Baker Mayfield did against Philadelphia, now Philadelphia laid an egg. I don't know what's going on there. That was a travesty.
It's up here.
It could be, or there could be some bad juju in the lot. I mean, I've seen it before when you have a really good team. Now, remember that team started 10-1, and then they lost 6 of their last 7 games or 5 of their last 6. When something like that happens, you see it in hockey more than other sports. You know that there's either the coach has lost the room or something has happened. The players have started taking sides because something happened and they want to keep a lid on it. And I don't know, maybe we'll get the truth someday. But you who kept a lid on?
There is a former Lions defensive coach who's the defensive coordinator for the Eagles. I don't know. Seems
Matt
like
Patricia.
That could work out. Yeah.
Well, it didn't work out when he was head coach with the Lions. It certainly didn't work out in the game against Tampa Bay in the wild card game. Look, Bill Belichick is the greatest coach of all time. We know that, but his assistant coaches just have not had near the success that he has.
Yeah, true. So, Kevin, tell me, what's your Caddie story? Like, when did it all start? Because I feel like caddying embodies you. Or you embody caddying.
Other than broadcasting and working for you, being an ambassador for Part T. Really, the only other job I've ever had in life is caddying. I started when I was 12 years old. I caddied because my father caddied. That was his ticket into golf, and he spoke highly of it. The money's good, and it's a chance to play. For him, it was the only way he was going to be able to play golf because most places allow you to play golf on Monday, and he had that at Montclair Country Club, and or is it golf club? It's Montclair. And we had that at Huntington Valley Country Club so I caddied there before my family joined. And in Pennsylvania, you had to be 15 before you could have your working papers and work anywhere, with the exception if you're a caddy. And I started caddying when I was 12. I loved it from the beginning. My older brother, Chris, he hated it. He said, "You're nothing but a mule. You're just a mule. You're just carrying people's golf. You're a mule." And I never saw it like that. I thought it was fun. It was good exercise. The money was good. And then I could play golf there, which I couldn't believe because it was such a beautiful place. And I always liked it, but I never really understood why until, remember I mentioned like certain things happen in my life and it's just like, oh my God, that says so much. Like I told you about hearing an interview with Tom Pernice Jr. talking about how his self-esteem was so wrapped up in his golf game. And then he said, "That's ridiculous. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a brother." And it just put it in perspective. But he spoke to me, and the caddying thing, I was fishing with a fishing guide who I later ended up, I wrote a book, and I've written 3 books, but it was my 3rd book. And it was about fishing with your dad and your brothers and just the bonding that comes together. And as he and I were fishing in a stream and he netted my fish, I asked him, I said, "Paul," his name's Paul Jacobs from Real Action Fly Fishing. I said, "Paul, wouldn't you rather be fishing than guiding?" And he said, "I am fishing." He said, "I caught that fish with you. I netted that fish. I put you on that fish." And I'm like, you know what? You're right. He's fishing too. He's fishing. And that spoke to me as a caddy. I'm playing golf. I'm just not hitting the shots. You know what I'm saying there, Andrew? It's like,
Absolutely.
if I'm caddying for you and I give you a read on a putt and we talk about it and then you roll it in and I see your joy, then, well, that's my joy because I made it too, or I helped you to get that feeling, and that's what caddying does for me.
Well, you taught me how to read Bermuda greens last week, and now I'm like, I feel like I can't miss. It's amazing.
It's all, well, everybody talks about that. It's like you come to Florida, you play on Bermuda greens, you have to factor in the grain. Well, who tells you what that exactly means? How do you recognize it? How does the ball react when it gets to the hole? Until somebody shows it to you, you won't know what they're talking about. And the importance of grain when it comes to putting, reading the grain is 15 to 20% of the putt, whether you make it or not. What matters most is what happens at the end as the ball slows down and loses energy. So if grain factors into making or missing a putt by 15 to 20%, you're a businessman. What's 15 to 20% of your bottom line?
Everything,
right? So if you don't factor that in, it's like adding an ingredient to something. Like you are changed. If you don't add something, you're missing out. If you add too much, then it's changing everything. It's profound. You have to know it, or you won't make putts in Florida.
So
or
it's
anywhere
funny.
else.
I told my wife how to do this, and she's like, "Oh, wow, that's interesting." And she went out and played with the ladies yesterday and took money off all of them. She said I couldn't miss putts. So maybe there's something to it. The aha moment.
That's exactly what it is. It's the light going off. And a lot of people just assume that you might know what they're talking about. So when I take a group out to caddy with them, I ask, I'm like, "Do you understand what grain is and how it impacts putting?" And they kind of have this look on their, and I'm like, "Listen, if you don't know, it's okay. If you know, I'm going to remind you of what you know." And then they feel smart, right? It's like, "Oh, I knew that." or if you're giving them an easy out to where they're like, I could use a little help here. And then what I do is I did what I did with you. I walk them up to the hole. I say, look at the hole. You see where it's a little bit burned out and worn, where there's shavings on the side. As the ball slows down, it's going to tend to pull in that direction. It's going to want to. It acts like a magnet. I mean, we could just simplify everything and just say, well, first you have to recognize where it is. And then you have to understand how it functions. Okay. See it, then you realize there's a magnet on that side of the hole. Now, if it's on the side where the putt is breaking naturally because of the slope, it magnifies the break, usually a ball or half a ball. But if it's opposite where the slope is, it's still acting like a magnet. It's going to lessen the break. You follow? You get it.
That's the hardest. That's actually the hardest read, is the one against the break. That's what I think. Just the harder. In time, I think I'll get it. So tell me about the Caddie code. I'm really interested in how that works. It's almost like they're like the Knights Templar. All right. It's like you can't crack into being a caddy. I mean, sure, as a kid, but if you're going to be a professional caddy, not anybody can do it. And you're sworn to like secrecy, or they're going to come in find you in the middle of the night and kill you. Tell me what it's really like.
All right. Yeah, because people ask about this. Ask about what they want the dirt. They want to know about a bad loop that you had, somebody that treated you poorly. Not unlike what we would ask of a waiter or waitress. Tell me about a bad customer. And the reality is, so I'm going to dodge, but it's not a dodge where I'm acting like it does. The reality is this: most people that come to play golf, there's no place they'd rather be. So naturally, they're in a really good mood. Yes. And it would take an awful lot for them to be angry or whatever. Now, if you're a good caddy, you can enhance their experience. If you realize that really it's all about them and it's not about you, you're passing along some information, but you're trying to enhance their day. And in the course of my life, I've done thousands of loops. I just don't really have any stories that are like, oh, I had this. Well, actually, I have one. Do you want me to tell you the one about when I was 14? There's enough.
Sure, why not?
Okay.
That guy's already dead, right?
No, he's probably still very much alive, okay. But I don't have.
It's pre-cell phones.
Oh yes. So I was caddying. I was 14, and at this point, we talked about breaking 70. So I was a scratch golfer by the time I was 14. Now, not everybody would know that. And I was out with this group. It was a man, and there were a couple of ladies. And one of the ladies was friends with my mother and knew my family story. But the guy was, he sort of like asserted himself as the captain of the group. Like he was going to lead the conversations and talk about stuff. And he's just like, waxing superfluously about like how wonderful golf is, and it's a wonderful opportunity to spend time in nature and walk, and it's very good for business. It can help you with business and this, and so he starts talking to me, and he's like standing over the ball like Judge Smale's kind of waggling. He's like, and someday, Kevin, you're going to recognize this. He's like, someday maybe you'll have an opportunity to play golf, and you'll kind of see like the wisdom in what I'm sharing with you right now. And I'm just kind of like, okay, or yeah, and then
you're
he keeps
Danny
going.
Noonan right now, right? You're Danny.
Pretty
Danny
much.
Noonan.
Right. I'm just like, why don't you improve your life, sir? And so I'm just sort of taking it, and I'm like letting the guy talk himself into a pretzel. And this nice woman, she like looks at me, and I look at her, and she's got her eyes like, and he keeps going on and on. And then he says, finally, the kicker, the lady got involved because she couldn't take it anymore. And probably I couldn't either, but she saved me. God bless her. He goes, the better you play, you can get a lower handicap. And like, if you have a low handicap, that's like very impressive to other golfers. Like if you happen to have a low handicap, and he's like, well, Kevin, do you have and maybe someday you'll have a handy. He's like, well, do you have a handicap? Do you know what a handicap is? I'm like, no, I know exactly what a handicap is. And he's like, well, what's your handicap? We call it an index now, right? But back then it was a handicap. And I'm like, I'm scratch. And he's like, well, I don't, what is that? You're what? And I'm like, I'm Scratch. And he's like, I don't know what and the lady interrupts and she goes, actually, Bob, Kevin does play golf. He's a very good golfer. Scratch means he's a 0. And the guy goes, oh, you do play golf. He was really embarrassed. That was 36 years ago. No, more than that. It was almost 40 years ago that happened. So that's,
did you,
that's a little nerd. I don't think I did. No. And he wasn't a bad guy. He was just naive. You just don't always know who around you does
like that.
Yeah.
There's so many guys like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So that's one little thing that goes back to the younger days. But I think as I've gotten older and wiser, you can just tell when somebody knows what they're doing with something, right? So I don't know that anybody would try to mess it. It just doesn't happen because they're happy to be there and I am too.
So how's your golf game these days? You still at Scratch?
No, I'm a 3. Man, I played today. I couldn't break an egg. I shot 82 today. Well, when I played with you, what was that? Like 2 weeks ago? I played pretty good. I was shot 74. That's pretty good for me anymore.
Oh, you were like par. And then I think something got in your head. And then you had a couple bad shots. And then you got mad at yourself.
Yeah, I had a bad run, but I made 4.
You had a couple. Yeah, that chip in. You had a sandy birdie, which is pretty impressive.
Right. But you know what? That's a good example of what my golf is. It can be good at times, and then I can just make just ridiculously bad decisions or just execution. I hit it like back when I could play. I was longer than average. Now with today's say, I'll just give you like an example. So when I was in college, I probably averaged about 265 to 270 off the tee. And that was just like a little, so with 50s average, I was like 51, 52%. And the ultra long guys were like 300. Right. And that just seemed like impossibly long. Now, like in Division I golf, it starts at 300. The long guys are like 350, 360. But with today's technology, the better ball, I maybe hit it 250 off the tee if I really hit it. So I've lost distance with all that good technology, and I just can't. I can't putt like I guess I suck. I don't know.
So have you ever played any competition other than maybe some little money games?
It's been a long time because like for me, it's like I don't want to compete unless I think I have a chance. I'm not putting in the time to really give myself a reason to think I have a chance. I'm just a social golfer, and that's fine. And my golf story is evolving. I'm trying to accept begrudgingly what I've become. I'm just not the player I once was. It's because of age. It's because I don't put in the same amount of time, and my skills have eroded. And it's very obvious to me. And it's kind of hard for me to accept that because, like, I walk off the course, shot 82, and it's like, what am I doing here? But I don't know. What else would I be? It's the only game we can play for life, right? I mean, it's all we have.
True. But you don't have loft issues, at least like the rest of us, where we have lack of effing talent, right? At least you can get up in there and hit the ball, and it's more up here, right? When you make mistakes.
It always, it is. No, I mean, it's all in your head.
Oh yeah. That's why it's the greatest game, because anybody could shoot a perfect score because they have had a perfect score on every hole on their club, baby. But put it all together at one time, it's up here or a little down here. But
yeah, you got to put it to, I don't know. I have not shot under par in more than a year. And so I'm a little worried. Has that ship sailed? That's part of it. But who cares about my golf? No. I mean, I should probably care less about my own golf and do what most people do. just, and I do, I play for the love of it, but like part of me holds on to what once was. I can't really play as much as like our whole jam at party is like have a couple cocktails when you're playing golf. I don't really do, because for me, I just kind of feel like my game is going to worsen. I can't deal with that, but maybe I just have to do a complete turnaround and just say, screw it. My best days are behind me. That's probably the better way to go. All right. So next time we play,
who knows?
Yeah, we'll have some parties, support the company.
So we're kind of, do you know we've been doing this for an hour so far?
Yeah, this is too long. We usually shoot for like
that's good.
Has it been that interesting?
I think so. I like it. So what I'm thinking is we probably want to do a lead out, and I'm not the broadcaster, and I don't remember half the stuff about all the what do you call it when you do the read, the advertising read or whatever it's called.
Oh, just some of the live reads, like who to thank properly and everything, so we can.
I think you should probably do that.
All right, yeah, I got it. Hey, look, big thanks to, I want to thank a couple. First of all, we have some news to report here, all right? And this is cool. So I'm going to get back in my news mode. Since we started the podcast about 2 months ago, we've now grown to 1,600 subscribers, 60,000 views, and 866 watch hours. That's on YouTube. Now, one thing that when I'm hosting the show, I try, if I have news to report, I want to give it to you. And I always ask for your help, and I tell you why. Hit the like button and hit subscribe. All right. Because the people like the bean counters at YouTube, they watch that stuff. We're getting closer and closer to reaching some magic numbers where we'll actually get paid for this. And I want to thank you for doing that. And I know you're doing it to help us, but I know you're doing it because you think this is cool. We're peeling back the curtain. We're kind of creating Oprah's couch, if you will. Come and tell your story on Party and give us warts and all. Tell us everything about like why golf is so important to you. That's what we do. So hit the like button and subscribe. That does a massive difference. And as we wrap up here, and before I hand it back to Andrew, hey, first of all, great job hosting. By the way.
Oh, thank you.
All right. No, you really did a nice job.
job. By the way, on top of what you were saying there is if you guys have any friends or anybody who you think would be awesome for our show, just reach out to us on Instagram and tell us, because the more people we get, the more interest, and it's like we're creating a nice community of like-minded people, and we just everybody who loves golf, and we just love everybody's story. So just anyone you can bring in. Let's hear it.
Yeah, because in the end, like when we hear other people's stories, we kind of like revisit our own. We vicariously live through them. Big thanks to those that sponsor us, the Golf Pro, Real Estate Pros, Gene Walsh and Vince Vizzacaro from Fine Properties. If your dream is to own a home in a golf or golf resort related community, nobody's better than Vince and Gene. Or if you happen to live in one of those places and you want to cash out because property values have really gone up down here and you want to get it while the getting's good and you want to sell the house, same thing. Get in contact with Gene and Vince. You can find them at Fine Properties or log on to suncoastdreams.com. And you can also call them at 941-220-4000. Hey, Andrew, you know what? I messed something up. Yeah, there you go. Party. If you want to know where it's sold, that's that guy right there. He created the drink. For a list of the places where it is sold, check out drinkparty.com. I can run through the list. Are you cracking one? I just heard something crack open right there.
No, we had a little bit of delay there. We can just keep going.
You got the ones going there. Okay, well, Transfusion, that is our number one seller by far. Then we have Morning Dew. For a list of the places where you can purchase it, log on to drinkparty.com. I'm just going to name a couple right now because, we control the content. We can do... I'm blocking the screen here. Damn. Sorry. My bad about that. What a bad host I am. I totally screwed that up. Bent Tree Country Club in Sarasota, Moccasin Wallow in Palmetto, Esplanade Osario in Lakewood Ranch, Misty Creek Country Club in Sarasota, Rosedale Country Club in Bradenton, the Preserve Golf Club in Bradenton, Lucky Mobile, which, by the way, is right across the street from the links at Greenfield Plantation. So go play golf at Greenfield Plantation and then go over to Lucky Mobile for maybe a 4-pack. That you're going to bring home with you. Cove Cay Marina, not just at golf courses, although that's our main jam. Cove Cay Marina in Clearwater has it. Siesta Key, Spearfish Grill, Crescent Beach Market, great places. Visit them. I do all the time. They're fantastic. Legacy Golf Club in Panama City Beach and Shark's Tooth, as well as Eagle Ridge in Naples, Old Memorial, New Pass Grill and Bait Shop, Longboat Key. Best place to have a burger, the best burger in the world, the best fries. Pull your boat up, get out there, have something to eat, drink some party. And also in the area around University of Florida, JJ's Tavern, Gator Liquor, and Extra Liquors. All right, so that's all the shilling that we have there. Andrew, nice job. If you want to host again, I mean, are you up for it, or have you had enough?
Absolutely. But right now, I'm actually looking forward to coming down to Florida to do a little fishing, because I heard that the fishing's gotten a little better the last few weeks. It was over end of December, January. It was rough, but hopefully next week we can do some fishing. Maybe Kevin, maybe I'll come up. We can go out and
let's take Jordan Miller out.
Yeah, let's do
Jordan
it.
Miller has been our most popular guest. The player on the West Florida Golf Tour, and also a charter boat captain. We'll do that. We'll catch some fish and we'll crush some parties. You good with that?
Because my wife wants me to take some fish home. It's sad. I've been eating whiting and little sheep's head and on my grill. That's all I've been eating so far. I mean, I need some pompano. I need some, maybe not some snook, but necessarily some redfish and some other tasties. But I'm working on it.
All right. Well, we got to find him, and we'll just bring Jordan along, all right? Because then that way we can maybe get on some of those fish, and you can come back home, and Mom will be all proud of you, all right?
That's right. So, all right, I can try this. Okay, I'm going to try to do the outro. Let's see if I can do it. All right. Everybody. I'm so glad you've been here. For Kevin Walsh, I'm Andrew McCabe. For Party Drinks, Suncoast Dreams. Thank you very much. All right, now you want to do it?
You nailed it. Leave it at that. Done.
All right, over and out.
You've been listening to It's Party Time, My Golf Story, brought to you by Party Drinks. Classically designed golf drinks for golfers by golfers, and the golf real estate pros Gene Walsh and Vince Vizzacaro. For your Southwest Florida real estate needs, check them out at suncoastdreams.com or call 941-220-4000.
This is Vince Vizzacaro and Gene Walsh with the suncoastdreams.com real estate team at Fine Properties. We've helped hundreds of families find their dream homes in golf and resort communities in Lakewood Ranch, Bradenton, Sarasota, Parrish, Venice, and the surrounding areas.
Let us be your guides to finding your dream home here as well. Learn more at suncoastdreams.com or call us at 941-220-4000.